kill unprepared families in a single night. Wind-sheltered areas became the gold standard for winter camping sites. Tree lines acted like massive natural windbreaks, cutting down brutal gusts that could turn any shelter into a freezing nightmare. These wooded barriers created calm pockets where temperatures stayed several degrees warmer than exposed areas hundreds of feet away. Choosing a campsite was like real estate hunting, where the wrong neighborhood didn't just mean bad schools. It meant your family turning into ice sculptures. Cliffs and rock formations provided similar protection while offering additional benefits. Stone faces absorbed heat during sunny winter days and released that warmth slowly throughout cold nights. Valley dips offered protection from the worst weather while providing access to essential resources. Clean water sources had to be within a reasonable distance because melting snow over fires all winter was exhausting and wasted precious fuel. Game trails brought fresh meat within hunting range, but also attracted predators that posed serious threats to sleeping families. They needed locations with all the amenities, water, food, and firewood, except their version of urban planning involved avoiding becoming dinner for bears. Firewood availability was absolutely non-negotiable. Running out of fuel during a winter storm.
You're gonna eat this taco on this Doritos, or you're gonna eat it on soft?
Dead trees down hard and flat, creating barriers that prevented deeper ground freezing while stopping spring melt from flooding shelter floors. Low areas could become deadly frost traps where temperatures dropped even lower than surrounding terrain. They turned snow into insulation, while most people today can't even figure out how to properly scrape ice off their windshields. Even being 10 feet higher on a slope could mean the difference between survival and freezing. But finding the perfect spot was only the beginning. Creating safe indoor fires inside fabric shelters required engineering skills that turned deadly flames into life-saving heat sources. The teepee fire wasn't just a regular campfire moved indoors. It was a carefully designed heating system that provided warmth without burning down the shelter or suffocating people inside. The fire pit position in the exact center created optimal heat distribution throughout the entire living space. The pit depth stayed shallow, around 6 inches, which prevented heat from getting trapped at ground level while promoting upward airflow that made the ventilation system work. Building fires inside a tent was like trying to cook dinner in a house made of paper towels, except somehow they figured out how to do it without burning everything down. Smoke flaps at the tippy top could be adjusted based on changing wind conditions. These flaps created a natural chimney effect that pulled smoke upward and out instead of letting it settle inside where it could suffocate sleeping people. Small side vents near the bottom created a draft system that fed fresh oxygen to the fire without turning the interior into a freezer. These vents brought in outside air while rising heat created suction that pulled air upward through the fire and out through smoke flaps. They invented central heating using nothing but wood and airflow physics, while most of us struggle with programmable thermostats that have actual instruction manuals. Only completely dry wood could be used because wet or green wood created thick, choking smoke that would fill the shelter and suffocate everyone inside. Vertical stacking in cone shapes burned cleaner and more efficiently than horizontal arrangements. Fire management required constant attention from skilled fire tenders. The fire had to burn hot enough to provide adequate heat, but not so hot that it made the shelter unbearable. Adults took turns monitoring flames throughout the night, ensuring sparks didn't escape and ventilation remained balanced. Being the fire tender was like being a human thermostat that never got to sleep, except instead of adjusting numbers on a wall, you were literally keeping your family from freezing or roasting. The fire provided heat from above, but the ground below was a different enemy entirely. Ground insulation systems were the foundation of surviving freezing nights, because even the best fires couldn't overcome deadly cold that seeped up from frozen earth. Native American bedding wasn't just comfort. It was thermal engineering that created barriers between sleeping bodies and ground that wanted to suck away life-giving heat. Thick padding materials formed the base layer that blocked ground chill. Willow mats were woven tight and stacked deep, creating air pockets that worked like natural insulation. Dry grass got packed into thick layers that trapped warm air while staying dry throughout winter months. Building beds from forest materials was like assembling furniture from nature's catalog, except instead of confusing diagrams, you had survival instincts, and the alternative was freezing to death. Buffalo hides and furs went on top in arrangements that maximized warmth. The hides were positioned fur side up to trap body heat, while leather back backing provided wind protection. Different furs had different properties. Some managed moisture while others excelled at heat retention. Some tribes perfected compacted soil beds as alternatives to heated stones. These beds were created by removing the top earth layer and compacting subsoil until rock hard. The compressed earth could hold on to heat from the day and release warmth slowly throughout the night. They invented heated mattresses using dirt and elbow grease, which sounds primitive until you realize it worked better than most modern heating systems. Bedding shapes were formed into shallow, nest-like depressions that cradled sleeping bodies while trapping warm air in protective pockets. These contoured sleeping areas worked with human body shapes to maximize heat retention. Multiple family members often shared sleeping areas in arrangements that multiplied the insulation system's effectiveness. Adults with higher body heat output were positioned to warm the sleeping space for children and others who needed extra heat. Family sleeping arrangements were strategic heat distribution systems disguised as bedtime cuddles, because sometimes survival looks a lot like a group hug. Daily maintenance kept materials working effectively. Padding had to be fluffed, moisture managed, and furs shaken and repositioned regularly. Yet even the most perfectly engineered bed was useless without understanding how to manage the heat source that mattered. It was about understanding how body heat worked and maximizing internal heat production while preventing heat loss. Pre-sleep activity periods were carefully timed to raise internal body temperature without causing problems that would make sleeping difficult. Light exercises and specific tasks were designed to pump blood and generate internal heat that would carry over into the sleeping period. They had bedtime workouts designed to generate internal heat rather than muscle definition, because the goal was staying warm, not getting swole. Clothing layers remained on throughout the night in strategic arrangements that provided insulation while allowing temperature regulation. The idea that people had to strip down to sleep was not just wrong, it was potentially deadly in winter conditions. Base layers made from soft processed hide stayed closest to the skin to manage moisture while providing insulation. Middle layers provided the primary thermal barrier using fur or thick hide that trapped air while blocking wind. Outer layers retained heat while providing protection from external cold. Getting dressed for bed involved more layers than a fashion model's winter photo shoot. Except instead of looking stylish, the goal was not becoming a human ice cube. Extremity protection received special attention because hands and feet lose heat faster than any other body parts. Specialized wrappings made from animal skin were designed specifically for fingers and toes, creating insulated coverings that trapped air. The tucking technique was essential for maintaining heat in critical areas. Hands were tucked into armpits or between clothing layers where body heat was concentrated. Feet were drawn up and wrapped in blankets or placed in special warming areas